All right. Howdy there, internet people. so we're a few minutes late. Just address the elephant in the room for literally the 75 million people that are watching this right now. I know. But I'm in a new studio. We've got some new setup that was going on. I've been traveling. Um, and we had some audio issues. We wanted you to be able to hear us. So thank you for waiting. Just appreciate you. Thank you for being here with us. Um, Today's episode, well, first off, welcome,
Welcome to the show. I
welcome to the
think
show.
Chris has the giggles now, so
Yeah, the other point I'm just going to be up and blatant about was I drove through the night last night to get here to Utah in order to prepare for a trip. And I haven't slept. So you get the Chris who is whatever the Chris is. So welcome to Liberation Lighthouse, where we create a safe space to talk about trauma, the darkness, all the things that you might be going through, and we help take the stigma out of it. Tonight's episode, we're going to finish off. There were some questions and some comments around the Kubler-Ross grief cycle that we talked about last episode. So we want to finish off a few things about that. We want to go into what happens after that. So once you get into awareness, right, at the end of the grief cycle, what happens after that, and where's the next step, and then helping you to create your own map for healing and liberation. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. As always, interact with us, jump on the comments. If you want to remain anonymous, you're welcome to remain anonymous. Give us a pseudonym. This helps us. This show, the reason we do it live is because we're setting it up for more and more interaction. We've been testing out how we could do a phone call and allow people to dial in. And so you being here with us means a lot.
it does. And I'm trying to get my slides in order here. I think visuals are a good thing, and so I apologize. I'm new to Keynote, which is what I have now instead of my usual PowerPoint. But please bear with me. I am attempting to make this visible for everybody. And let's see now if I can
Oh,
get
here it
this
is.
up.
So because I'm the host this week, you did it. You brought it up. You're sharing your screen. So now this is your screen.
This is
And
my screen, and we need to get rid of the stuff on the side here. Let me.
yeah, so if you share just your window instead of the entire screen, there we go.
Is that good?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I guess we'll start it off. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready for it. But before then, I just want to make sure that we get into some of the questions and comments that we had on the grief cycle from the last episode,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So our beautiful friend Josh, thank you, Josh, went through the last episode, and he had some comments that I think are really helpful in this, as well as some experiences that may help out as well. So one of his questions that he had in the last episode, at the very end of it, we talked about having the grief cycle, and we talked about at the bottom of the graphic there were the how to best help somebody, like giving them information, emotional support, and then guidance. And the question was, how do those apply, and how do those help people who are going through the grief cycle? And so just to provide a little more context around that, when somebody is in the place, especially in the grief cycle, when you're going through the point of denial, right? Getting to something that's like guidance or solution oriented, or here's how to fix it, just doesn't work. Somebody isn't even at the point yet of being able to recognize that there is a problem, right? They're in denial. That's the point of denial. And so the best thing that can help people out is to help give them information. Like just share, like, hey, this is what I went through in my life. A lot of what worked between Rod and myself was like sitting down with him, and he was at a point where he was open and just sharing what I had been through. and helping him, open up to even more, like to be able to say, okay, what might the next steps be? If you start to get down into like the anger portion, you get down into the bargaining or justification, you get up into depression, emotional support, like to just be there for people, being a listening ear, like to help them out. You don't have to put yourself in anything that's against your boundaries, but it's essentially to let people know that you care. Like that's the best way to support them. And we'll get into some of the tools that help to do this as well. And then once you get to the end of a cycle, when somebody gets to the point of acceptance, that's the point at which it's like, okay, guidance. Here are some solutions. Here's something that you might want to try. Here's the thing that helped me. Like all of that, like the actual guidance action, like that's when it's going to have the most effect. And
May I interject here for a
yeah,
second?
please, 100%.
So, as you're approaching people for help, if you're the one needing the help, and you come up to somebody and ask them to be that shoulder or that ear, that is something very heavy. And sometimes some people might say, I'm sorry, but I can't. And that's the thing with trauma. Sometimes listening to other people's stories can trigger us, and some people just aren't ready to experience those triggers, or they don't feel comfortable or strong enough um, to help you when you're asking for help. Please don't hold that against them. That is them just realizing that they would probably not be a good fit for you at this time. It's not a, go take a hike type deal. It's, I'm got my own stuff that I'm dealing with, and I'm not sure if I can provide that emotional support. So keep that in mind, and don't be put off by somebody simply saying that they can't. Okay. Um, Go to a next person. Try to find another way of getting it out, but please don't hold it against somebody, and don't think it's something against you. The other person might be dealing with their own hurts, their own trauma, and they're just afraid that um, listening to your experiences might trigger theirs.
Thank you. They just might not have the bandwidth. I'm really
Right.
glad you brought that up, Rod. I know that when I was going through that and I was in that period and I would go to reach out, um, there were a couple of times that come to mind where something like that happened. And what it felt like to me, the way I perceived it and received it, was rejection. And
Right.
then I allowed that to become, well, then F this, I'm shutting down. Like I tried to get help. See, and that's what I get. And I allowed it to become yet another justification, right? For not going even further and getting that help. So I've lived it. I know that it's true. And I can look back and go, damn, like that person was going through some stuff. They just didn't have it. And the depth and the weight with which I was bringing something forward, like some people just aren't ready or capable for that yet, but somebody else will be. I did eventually find other people who would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another beautiful point that Josh brought up. So in the bargaining phase of the grief cycle, like Rod and I shared that for us, the word justification fit better. The beautiful thing when we've talked to a few other people is bargaining actually did fit. And one thing that Josh shared that I really appreciated is that when you're in that bargaining phase, one of the ways you can recognize that, it's that you end up with like these if then statements. Like again, you're bargaining. Well, I'll do that if, and you're essentially finding a way not to fully accept what's going on, not to fully accept help, not to even take on the responsibility of like your own healing path. But that's one way that you can identify if you're in that justification or that bargaining phase, is like unconsciously or even consciously in your brain, you're making that well, if then maybe I will. And it's just a way of delaying, putting off, avoiding. Again, that part of the cycle is completely natural, completely normal. No issue with that, but you can just recognize where you are. Or if you're trying to help somebody else, you could recognize where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, denial tends to creep back in every step, I swear to God.
It's like what was it? Shoots and ladders. Like
Yeah.
you hit the one, boop, all the way back
Straight
down.
back.
Denial.
Very much so. It's not a funny thing, but you got to make light of it. You really do. It's otherwise we're just going to end up crying here in our beer or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's you'll notice us laughing a good amount in this, and it's that laugh of recognition, right?
yeah,
Like once you've played this game, it's almost like a game that you end up playing. Once you've played the game a few times and you see the patterns and they happen, the way I look at it is, I still get like locked in some of these cycles. They happen. We're human. We're natural. I have a friend who is incredibly enlightened, and he still has his own patterns, right? Like we're
yeah,
human. We have patterns. Um, but I can always look back. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's a year ago. And I'm like, oh, silly plow. Oh, I love you. You were trying so hard. But oh, you got like back into the pattern again. And
yeah.
it's out of compassion. Like I'm not making fun of myself, but it is like that, oh, silly plow.
Didn't know better, but
Didn't
now
know
I do.
better. Now I do. The other point I really want to make sure that we're clear on, we do share, like within this, that you're not alone. It's one of the phrases that has always resonated with me. It resonates with Rod. It's one of the that we share, and the whole purpose of you're not alone is, again, it's taking the stigma out of this. It's taking the shame out of this. It's the fact that, quite honestly, just about everybody walking around this planet has some form of trauma, right? Uh, for some of us, it's been labeled as PTSD. There are various degrees of it, all of that stuff, but everybody's got some. And so it's normal to go through the grief cycle. It's normal. Everybody's going to go through it. You're going to lose somebody at some point. You're going to have some hurt at some point. There's going to be a change of identity at some point in your life. It may happen because you lose a job. It may happen because you lose a loved one. It's normal. This is part of being human. We're just not given a manual. We're not taught these things in school. We have no context for it. We're not shown how to create our own map. And so we begin to feel, at least I know I have, a lot of people that I've helped have, you begin to feel like this is only happening to me. So there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm alone, like all the different ways that this can go. And all we're trying to help you understand is, nah, man, you're just playing the game. This is the game that we're all playing. You just get better and better at it over time. And then some of the things that would trip you up don't trip you up anymore.
Yeah. And then you find new things that trip you up, and then
Yeah.
you get
But
to figure those out. Yeah.
yeah, but they can be like, it gets more fun. Like I can share that. I still get tripped up over things. There's still things I go through. Slowly and surely, it gets to be a bit more fun because, again, it's that recognition. It's like, oh, I'm here again. It's like once you become aware of your thoughts, like sometimes I end up with these spiraling thoughts, and I'll start thinking, why did that guy say that thing to me? And I'll just start going down like these thought spirals. And then for a moment, I'll have this awareness. I'm going, oh, I'm just thought spiraling. It's just a thought. And you kind of like chuckle about it. And then you move on, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to learn the tools to be able to work through this, which is a lot of what we'll get into both in this episode and in further episodes, which is about creating that whole map to your healing, that map to your own liberation. So with that, yes, this is, and I tell you, thank you, Josh. You are greatly appreciated. Josh just shared, I believe that what you're saying, so this now goes to a couple of points back, but I believe what you're saying in regards to the bottom of the graph, which is the grief cycle that we were talking about, we shared in the last episode, that depending on what stage you're in, you might be more receptive to one kind of help or another. Yes. So like when you're in the denial stage, you're not being really receptive, or somebody's not going to be receptive to, here's how to fix this, just fix it. Like, again, you're not even recognizing there's a problem. So you're more receptive to information. When you're in the anger, the bargaining justification, the depression space, you're more receptive to emotional support. It's both very helpful and you're more receptive to it. And then when you get to the point of being accepting and having that level of awareness, then you are receptive to here's what you need to do. So yes, exactly. You took the words out of my mouth, brother. Thank you. So with this, you want to bring up your beautiful,
Let's do it.
incredible starting the process. All right.
Starting the process. What do we mean by that? Now, a lot of people think, well, maybe I have to go through this entire grief cycle and mourn my loss of identity, maybe my loss of happiness, my loss of fill in the blank, right? But not necessarily. You can begin the process at any point during the five stages, except for maybe denial, right? Denial is the one that's going to keep you from getting anything started.
It's one of the ones that keeps you stuck the longest.
Right. So going back to the grief cycle, just realize that no matter what step you are in the grief cycle, the healing path has already begun because you've started a process. Your body, your mind, your subconscious is dealing with something, and you're getting the effects of trying to figure it out, right? That healing path has begun. You recognize there's something off. You recognize that maybe you shouldn't feel this way. And so just that recognition alone um, is part of that healing, right?
There's something that I realized several years ago that changed the game for me a little bit. And I've said this in two different ways. I've said clarity is progress or awareness is progress. Just having a new awareness about something is literally a huge step. Like the step between denial, I'm not aware of something, to just beginning to become aware of it, even before you get to acceptance, is like, it's a light year step. And so it's worth just appreciating yourself for that. Like just being aware and even congratulating yourself, because that is one of the biggest steps in the whole thing to be able to go through.
And I got to say, personally, even though I was in denial about having PTSD, I was not in denial about being off,
Mm.
feeling off. So,
Not normal, not how you used to or thought you should be.
right, right. And like I said in episode one, I inadvertently stumbled upon a couple of things that actually helped me, and I didn't realize it. For me, being meditation and yoga, right? I got out of the Navy. I went to college using the GI Bill. I decided to sign up for a yoga class mainly because, well, the Navy beat me up a little bit, and I had some sore spots I wanted to work on. And then yoga introduced me to meditation, and having that hour a day really helped clear my mind for the rest of the day. And I didn't realize it was doing anything for me until I stopped doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was starting to get um, the anxiousness, the twitchiness, the triggers, the that borderline irritability. And so it kind of became important for me, and I realized that I needed to meditate and stretch on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And when I didn't, I really did feel it. Not only did my back go out, but um, my mood was just night and day, night and day. Um, Other modalities of starting this is talk therapy or group therapy or coaching, and
Right
that doesn't
before,
mean.
sorry,
Go
right
ahead.
before you move in, and just to jump in, like something I just, man, I might have realized this before, but it's just coming into clearer view.
Yeah.
So, literally for a completely different reason. Those of you who don't know, I went to college, but I went to college for all things of theater arts, acting, directing, design, right? Like the completely different,
Right.
than a lot of people. But acting is about getting in touch with emotions. It's about getting in touch with the body, etc. In several of the acting courses I had, like they took us through yoga. They took us through meditation. They took us through all these things so that you could like center into yourself. You could feel your emotions. You could express your emotions. I had no clue. But when I later on got into all of these modalities, looking at them for healing or for helping myself be better, as opposed to that, like I already had this foundation built. And so just like you, I ended up inadvertently stumbling into these. And then that became an important foundational block, right? What we're talking about here is you're building your foundation a lot. In the grief cycle, especially, you build your foundation a lot. And that became something that was a very strong tool that I could use over and over and over again.
And it's funny that you should mention it. I should have included it here. I totally spaced it. But in the book, The Body Keeps the Score,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the doctor's name, Vaughn something. I'm horrible with
Vanderkolk.
names.
Yep.
I apologize. But yes, he actually talks about drama and acting as far as part of a therapy.
Oh,
And
huge.
yeah, yeah, and how especially for young teenage people, there was a couple. I believe it was Chicago. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong in the city, but there was a court that started mandating theater classes for juveniles that were coming in, in trouble, and found that I guess there was a couple of studies that found that theater and acting and drama and all this other stuff really allowed for these youths to express themselves where before they were not allowed to in their homes or able
Mm-hmm.
to, and just that alone really helped in their own um, trauma survival, if you would, in their own processing of their lives and their grief and whatever traumas they had
Yeah.
endured through their lives.
Like if you look at it again, like Body Keeps a Score, incredible book, absolutely hands down one of the best reads you can have when it comes to all of this. Um, and it comes down to being in touch with your body, being in touch with your emotions, like taking like this disconnected experience and bringing it all back in, which is why, yes, like theater, which is all about the body and all about the emotions, is can be a very powerful tool. Thank you.
Definitely. And I totally spaced it. I apologize for that, but that should go in here too. That is one of the modalities that helps kind of like this disconnected head syndrome to get back in touch with your body,
Mm-hmm.
with movement, with feeling, that kind of thing. So yes, talk therapy, group therapy, coaching, meditation, yoga, and I would add theater,
Yeah.
just acting.
Theater and art in general. Like I've seen art therapy as a whole. So right, so going beyond just theater, like it's about getting in touch with what's going on below the surface. 100%.
Definitely. So, what comes in after acceptance? Well, it can feel like acceptance. It can feel like you can no longer tolerate living in that manner. It's, for some people, it can feel like empowerment. For other people, it could feel like ownership of the issue. Um, and you can go between acceptance and non-acceptance if you would. I know I attempted to do that myself a couple of times, especially when I was going through talk therapy and other modalities were offered to me. I was swapping back and forth with, well, I'm already doing this. Do I really need to be doing that as well? Um, that kind of a deal. Um, but for me, I also realized that the more modalities that I could learn, the more tools I could put in my toolbox, and just kind of find more ways of helping myself.
Dude, that
So,
just I want to like just highlight that part of this, right?
mhm,
Like there we'll talk about this as we go on, so I'm not going to spoil it and everything else. But there's not just one path of healing, and so a huge part of this is getting your own toolkit, like learning all the things that you can do to help yourself like be connected with yourself, feel the emotions you need to feel, express, have like a healthy relationship with yourself, healthy relationship with others. And so building your toolkit and experimenting with all of these modalities to find out what works for you, huge part of this process. So like the effort in testing and trying and experimenting each one of them out, it's not wasted, it's only a gain. And if
So
you even use it at the mindset, which has helped me of like, I'm just experimenting with this. Not to say you're not going to commit and actually try, but it allowed me to not worry about failing. Like for me, failure has always been something I've set a high bar on. And so like even the thought that I might step into something and fail at it would keep me from even trying something. So I try to start with that like experiment beginner's mindset. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to experiment with this, but I'm going to really do it. I'm going to commit and do it well, but it's just an experiment. And
yeah.
that shifts the energy of it for me, that actually allows me to try something as opposed to, yeah, someday, and the someday never comes.
Someday, but
Is not a day of the week.
it's not a day of the week. But I gotta say, acceptance to me almost translates into talking about it, admitting you have that problem, admitting you have that issue.
Mm.
And to me, the talk therapy, whether it's formal or informal, with a friend or with a professional, just getting it out, just literally being able to voice it really did help with the acceptance part, at least for me. Because before that, I was definitely in denial, even though I was, going in and out of that, the 5 steps of the grief cycle. I never got to the last one until the very end. But I think I started asking for help. Um, I'm not even sure which step I was, jumping back and forth from, because I had been doing anger, I had been doing denial, and it almost seems like I was doing a couple of these simultaneously before I realized I had a problem, and then I was ready to talk about it,
Yes. To be open about it.
to be
Right.
open. And
Yes.
so that ability to, it was so hard just to voice, I think I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That simple phrase was one of the hardest things I've ever had to say out loud to anybody, especially myself, because I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it from myself, and it was increasingly difficult to voice that to other people, to complete strangers, to the world. It honestly felt like, okay, it was such a big part of my life that had been kind of shoved in there and kept a secret, even though if you'd been around me, you'd know there was something off. Um, but once I started just being able to talk about it, the acceptance kind of came in with that.
The two most challenging steps that have occurred for me over and over again are, one, the move from denial to something's not right, like just
Yeah.
that shift. And the second one to this acceptance and then being willing to be open about it. Like those for me are the two that feel like the biggest steps. They don't have to be, but they feel like they are. They're the ones that I fear the most. Like internally, the resistance, all the fight or flight, like comes around those. And with each of those are the two that have also given me the most relief. Going from denial to, ooh, something's off here. Like then I'm like, oh, like if I'm aware of something, then I can actually do something about it. I begin to actually feel a bit more empowered. And then same with me, like you go back and listen to my story, episode 2, I believe. Um, when I went to my grandmother's house, of all places, right, and sat down and began to have the conversation, being open about the suicide, depression, all the things that I had experienced in my life, the last thing in the world I wanted to do, one of the hardest conversations to start, and literally the way I envision it, because it felt this way, it's like surrounded by this darkness, this fog, this impenetrable fog. And yet, as I began talking about it, it's like the light of that conversation just started to evaporate it. And literally within 15 minutes, I was standing there and it felt like it was just a calm, like sunny day.
Yeah.
Like literally, I felt one of the greatest reliefs of my life over the span of 15 brave minutes. Right? Like
Yeah.
incredible. And there was still more to go. The path still continues. And yet like fundamental. So if you're feeling the resistance, it's like in these two phases as you go through it, again, that's normal,
Yeah.
completely normal. And that's where being brave, having some courage and care, right? But doing that and just being able to be with that, the rewards that you experience are incredible. Like
And
that's
I want to just step in here for a minute. Um, that having courage, that bravery, that doesn't mean you're not scared. It really doesn't.
oh
You
yeah,
know, it could be the scariest. It was the scariest thing I've done in my life.
terrifying.
But I did it anyways, and that's what makes it bravery. It's the having the fear
Mhm.
and doing it anyways.
It's not fearless. It's actually, for me, every time it's been full of fear and choosing to step forward. And then, of course, like you do with everything, like each time you do it, it becomes a bit easier. Like
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable, but you get used to the uncomfortableness and it doesn't stop you in the same way that it did before.
Yeah.
And this is where when I put it into our notes, like because there's so much, like in that 15 minutes there was such a relief in my life that happened, like that darkness literally got dissolved, shame that I had felt like it was just being lifted off of me. So there's a perception that like all the gains are coming here, but really it's a culmination of everything that you've been through. That's why it is important. It's important to go through the grief cycle. It's important to get the support that you need. It's important to recognize that that moment is a result of all the stuff that's been done, in the same way that that winning play, that incredible play during a game, is the culmination of an incredible amount of preparation, of practice, of all the other things that went into it, right? That's what this is like.
Like the biggest thing I can say is, I wish I hadn't waited so long to just admit I needed help.
Yeah.
Just it would have saved me so much time. And no matter where you are in your process, um, just know that there's this step, there's this door that if you choose to go through it, it just it leads to a nicer place. It really does. Um, and it can be perceived as that shift, as that pivot point, if you would, to the start of something new,
Yeah.
something not as dark, something a little bit lighter.
It's like the sprouting of a seed, right? Like
Yeah.
all the work that went into the seed sprouting up, you never see, but then all of a sudden, boop, you see it pop out of the earth, right? That's what happens in that moment. And then from there, it gets a chance to grow and to flourish. And
Yeah.
that's what I want for everybody.
Yeah. Misconceptions. Um,
So, like for context, the misconceptions are especially around like the entire healing journey. So now this is no longer just about the grief cycle. It's not just about the awareness and that willing choice, that taking full responsibility and ownership for oneself that comes right after the acceptance. This is now for the entire thing.
so you've chosen to peek your head out the door
Yep.
and start your journey,
Yep.
and maybe you start talking to people and admitting you have a problem, but certain misconceptions can happen, as with anything. With you have high expectations, and those high expectations might be more than what this thing can offer you, at least on its own, or it's not it's not a quick fix. This is definitely a journey. This is not um, one and done. This is not the silver bullet. um, there is no one path fits all. Everybody's a little bit different. Every trauma is a little bit different. And if you've gone through trauma a few rounds in your life, you know that traumas differ. So it's
And
going
your
to take a while.
psychology differs and your
Yeah,
emotions differ, and what you're receptive to differs,
yeah,
right? Like there was a point in my life, like talk therapy didn't work for me because I was unwilling to be open and vulnerable with somebody else, right? So it wasn't a good fit for me at that time because of where I was and how I was. Later
and
on, I found other modalities that were essentially like, other versions of talk therapy, and I was open to it, and I found people that I trusted, and it made a huge impact, right?
I think I think the key thing is you found other people to be open, which is also talk therapy. It might have been informal, but I
And
think
but
that the
also at the
key,
right time, right?
yeah,
I was willing to engage at that point in time. And
right,
so I'm not downing talk therapy in any way. What I'm saying is, no matter what the modality is, it's finding the right one for you at the right time.
at the right time, and you got to be open and receptive to it as well. If you're still in denial and you go to talk therapy and the only thing you tell the person there is I ain't got no problem, well, they're not going to be able to help you, right? Um, you might think that you can outsmart them or you can just blow them off or whatnot. Well, they do this for a living. They realize that you are still in denial and they can't help you until you come out of that stage and are ready for help. Okay. Um, I attribute this to kind of like going to the bar where with other vets. I used to go to the VFW because I would listen to their stories, and their stories made my story um, a little bit smaller. Right? It,
Mm.
it, it minimalized the trauma I had because they fared off a lot worse than I did. Right? So even though I
Man,
was in
that
a
guy is
group
screwed, but
therapy
thank God
setting,
I'm okay.
yeah, in a group, even though I was in a group therapy type setting, I wasn't contributing my end and my trauma to it. I wasn't open. I was more of a comparing instead of just receiving. I was just wasn't in that place, and that was my bad. I should have been more receptive, and maybe I would have fared a little better instead of just comparing myself to them.
Yeah, but I mean, then for fairness, you weren't ready. Like you
I
weren't
wasn't
in
ready.
that place. You weren't ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess what we're saying is it's going to take some time to heal, and as long as you're willing to begin a process, you're on that path to healing.
It yes, and the other side of this coin is, what I had experienced and been through went on in my life for 25 some odd years. What you went through is 20 how many years?
Well, about 25, but I like to say 23 because that's when I got out of the Navy. I didn't realize I had issues. If I think back, I had issues while I was active too.
All right, so 23, 25 years, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
give or take.
so then, again, our logical mind gets involved in this and we start to make assumptions. Well, man, if I've been doing this for 25 years, it's going to take me years. Maybe it'll take me a decade to work through this.
Yeah,
No. Again, that's not a silver bullet. It's not like snap your fingers, boom, everything's done. All right, pat you on the butt, send you out. But it's also doesn't mean that the duration that you've experienced this is the duration that the healing is going to take, right? A lot of this comes down to your acceptance, your openness, your willingness to commit and like receive the help and to be active and to take
you got to do the work.
ownership of your path, to do the
You
work.
got to
The
do the work.
work works. You
Yeah.
got to do the work,
You
right?
got to do the reps. You can't go to the gym once, bench press a couple pounds and then expect to be buffed by the next day. It doesn't happen like that. You got to
And
do the
yet,
reps. You got to do the
what
work.
shifts and changes in a body and a mind and a psychology over the course of a few weeks, over the course of months, can be tremendous,
Yeah,
right? So, like, that's a great way to look at this.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we begin mapping this path? Well, again, understand that this is a process. You do have to take responsibility for your own path, right? You got to do the homework. What is out there? What is available to you, right? Do you feel comfortable simply talking to a couple of close knit friends, or do you need to talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist that could possibly prescribe medication to you, or perform EMDR, or like my counselors, they gave me a ton of like really good apps to do guided meditation. They suggested going to the gym and like getting some of that energy, some of that angst out, which helped. They were all little things that, when put together, definitely put me in the path to something greater. And it's a process and it's a path, right? And please excuse the pun. It's life's a journey, right? We
So
all end up in
cue
the
the
same spot.
Aerosmith song right
Yeah,
now. Life's a journey, not a
not a
destination.
destination, right?
Yeah.
So, we
And
we all die in the end. It's just, can we enjoy our time while we're here before we
yeah.
get there?
Yeah, to the next point as well around multiple tools. One of the greatest things, and I did this because I didn't know anything else to do. So it wasn't like I was like the smartest crayon in the bunch. Yes, I know that analogy doesn't work, but I wasn't the smartest crayon in the bunch. Um, when I got to that point of finally, for the first time, hitting a level of acceptance, one of the greatest choices I made was I have no idea what it takes to move past this. I have no idea what it takes to live a rewarding, fulfilling, meaningful life. I have no idea what it takes to feel healed and to feel like normal and to feel good. And so I just said, I'm going to commit to everything. Like, not everything, but I'm going to be open to everything. And I'm going to try all of this stuff. And the greatest gift that gave me is this plethora of tools, like literally everything from traditional therapies to old shamanic rituals to medicines to coaching and new age, some of the healings there, to looking at the physical side of things and diet and the gut biome and how does that affect things, to putting on neuro transmitter caps, neurofeedback caps, excuse me, and rewiring my brain, like literally trying all of it.
Holotropic breathing is an exciting one. I'd like to try that.
Yes, we're going to, like,
Yeah.
you, me, and Josh are doing the 21 day breath challenge, breath work challenge for one, and doing some of that. But like that plethora of tools gave such an understanding of what's out there beyond just the normal prescription. All I had known before then was, all right, well, go talk to a doctor, and a doctor might prescribe you something to help you feel better. Like that was all that I knew, which can be helpful. I have a friend in particular, I'm thinking of him right now, I'm not going to say his name, who's been very much helped by that. Right. So none of these tools, none of these modalities are like good or bad. It's, again, like, right one in the right way at the right time. And that's how you begin developing the toolkit that we've been talking about. That's why we're going to share more and more about all of these tools, so you can get an understanding what each one is and see which ones you feel drawn to, which ones are going to fit for you, and begin creating your toolkit, because your healing journey is going to be unique to you. There will be commonalities with a lot of people. There'll be commonalities with me, with Rod, with other people that we've known, but it's going to be unique to you. And that's why you got to find all of these tools and then find out for you how they come together and in which way they come together. That just gives you incredible results.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes when you're in those phases in life where it feels like a downward spiral, as you start coming out of it, it can sometimes feel like an upward spiral, where things are no longer as overwhelming as they might have been once upon a time. Um, Basically, because you've learned some skills, you've learned a few things along the way to just kind of help you get out of that funk a little bit easier. Um, yeah.
Yeah, a way that I can describe this. Um, for those who are listening to audio, I apologize. For those with video, I'm going to apologize as well because I'm just moving with my fingers. But I imagine like we have these events that happen in our lives, right? And they leave a mark. And we're going to have similar events that happen like that again and again in our life. It's like we're spiraling upwards. But as we spiral upwards, we're hitting that same thing from a different vantage point. And each time it gets easier. For the way I can describe this in my life was the emotional reaction that I would have to rejection uh, early in my life was devastating. Like devastating, fight or flight. I don't want to live anymore. And then like you get to a point where it's like, oh, that hurts. And it would knock me off my game for, I don't know, a day or two. And then it's like, oh, all right, I got to walk that one off. But it's just like, I sprained my ankle a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, you get to a point and I'm like, huh, that would knock me out for a day, a week, a month before. And now I still feel it, but like it's no biggie.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not taking it personal in the same way that I was before. I'm not physically, mentally, emotionally, neurologically affected by it in the same way. And so you continue to spiral upwards and all of this gets easier. Then you get to have like new and interesting challenges in your life. All of your time and attention isn't being spent trying to avoid this one thing that just throws you completely off.
Yeah. If I take a look at how much time I devoted to avoiding my triggers, uh, shopping in the middle of the night, avoiding crowds, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it definitely adds up. It was definitely time consuming and draining, very draining.
Draining. And
Yeah.
like again, like we wouldn't be able to put on this show, we wouldn't be able to start this company if both of us were still consumed in the same ways that we were before, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have the time to be able to be there with your wife and daughter,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't have the time to be in this relationship that I'm in. I wouldn't have like all the things. And so another benefit, if you want to just look at like, okay, like why should I do this? I want to start to look at that. It's imagine, imagine you have this huge leech on you and it's just sucking your energy and it's sucking your time away, right? When you finally like remove that, when you're finally free of that, and that's just not like sucking you dry, it's not taking your time, your attention, it's not taking all those things. Like, where could you put that? Like where could you put your time, your attention? What is it that you could create? Who could you be with? What is it that you want to do? What in the world might you like go experience? Like what are the things that you could actually have in your life? And that could be scary on its own. Like being able to actually have the things you want can be its own challenge.
Oh yeah.
But what could you actually have that feels impossible today, that just with having that time, energy, that focus, that attention, having that back, what could you have in your life? And that right there is a North Star. That's one thing to say, I'm going to have that. And that's one thing to help keep you motivated when it's tough. It's one thing to keep you motivated when you've stumbled and you've fallen and you got to like pick yourself back up again. Right? Yeah.
The skills we learn.
The skills we learn.
And that was that's it. That was my last file there.
Yeah. There's two things I want to do here. One is I just want to take a moment. Thank you. Thank you for creating the slides and visuals for us. I know that I've said this to privately. I'm going to say it publicly as well. I appreciate the energy that you bring to this, especially with having been a teacher for a long time, in order to share in a way that we can truly help people. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I didn't do this just for you.
I know you're doing this for all everybody else. I'm just simply here the one to thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
It also helps me to have a visual. Some people are visual, some people are auditory learners, and just I know you're pretty, and I know I'm pretty, but just staring at our mug isn't always, the most educational part of the show.
I gotta speak for yourself. I think that staring at my mug is literally probably one of the best life choices somebody can make.
That's part of it. Just today.
No, no, you're absolutely right. Again, like uh, a lot of the things that we're orienting in here, like going back to the grief cycle, um, we're presenting things that are on that informational side, right? The show goes deeper. We're going to get into the other support methods, but because we know that that step from there's nothing wrong with me to there might be something that's a little off is such a big one, and that often information is the greatest way, the thing that people are most receptive to help to break out of denial and into just the consideration
Yeah.
that maybe there is something here that could be helped. Maybe there is something here that I can take greater ownership of. Maybe there's something here that if I were to actually heal, that I could have a better life.
If uh, if I were to get anything out of this, it'd just be the knowledge that I might have helped somebody out there start a path for something better. You know, yeah, I think I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. With that, folks, we're going to go through and start to do a bit of a wrap up, but this is also the point where if you have any questions, any comments, any way that you're not sure how this might apply to your life or something that you've experienced that's different, you say, look, that's great. I appreciate what you have, but my experience has been different. You're welcome to comment in, share that, and interact with us.
Yeah.
As this show moves forward, like I've shared before, it's going to become more and more interactive. There's a phone line coming. There's all these ways so that we can work together. Right now, we've set this up because we're still at this information sharing stage it's a little bit more of a broadcast. Our vision of this show is that this is interaction, that this is a safe space. We get to help each other out. That's where we're going. And I'm glad to have you guys on the ride.
Thank you. And we really do appreciate your comments. Even if you want to just comment at the bottom on the YouTube little comment section, um, we read them, we go through them, we acknowledge them. We try to present them at the beginning of the show, even though, I sometimes forget that we have comments. Chris has been really good about making sure that questions don't go unanswered.
Yeah, they
Um,
make this better, right?
they
Like
do. It,
what we got from Josh made our show better because we're not going
yes.
to get this perfect, right? And even if we were the experts in the field, we're not going to get it perfect. There's always something to learn,
Yeah,
and you are a part of that.
definitely. Definitely. So once we got the 800 number going, please feel free to drop us a line. In the meantime, please feel free to chat with us live or introduce your comments at the bottom of that page. And I promise you, we'll get to them. We will get to them. We're not so huge that we can't possibly be bothered or anything like that. But thank you.
Josh is I mentioned a beautiful mug. I mean this mug right here, this beautiful face. Not the other mug, but
Not the
thank
other
you.
mug.
His comment for those on audio was, Chris, you mentioned you have a beautiful mug. Please hold it up to the camera so we can see it. Uh, I do have a mug that I was going to possibly bring, but it was a bit risque. So maybe next time. So
Maybe
to
next time.
look at the episode and just kind of like, again, break this down to help it be even more clear, right? Like sometimes we hear something in a slightly different way and it just begins to hit. I know that's happened to me all the time. Um, like just beginning this, like one thing I really want people to understand about the grief cycle and as you go through it is it can often feel like the slowest part of this. It can often feel like one of the more challenging parts, But I view the grief cycle and going through it and getting to that point of acceptance as building the foundation. That's why talk therapy, yoga, meditation, art therapy, group coaching, group therapy, all of those things are giving you tools and the foundation that once you get to the point of acceptance, like it's like rocket fuel. Those are the tools that are really going to help you go forward even more, and you're going to use them in other ways. So, in future episodes and where we're going next is to start talking about the different therapies and modalities so that you have an understanding of what's out there. And you begin to understand that some of these modalities in combination with each other have even stronger and more beneficial results for you. And by having that foundation built, you can put it into effect. Like for me, the foundation that I built in meditation and some in talk therapy, but especially for me, the way I'm oriented in meditation, I've used that so many times over and over and over again that it's become a core of all the other modalities that I've experienced in a way that it brings me back into my body, helps me feel and be present with what's going on, not compartmentalize, not detach, like actually feel the emotion as it's happening and then be done with it, not have to experience it again. But I learned that so long ago. And quite honestly, I learned it while I was going through the grief cycle, unknowingly, but when I was going through the grief cycle.
Yeah.
So realize that that is valuable work, very valuable work, even though it often doesn't feel like it's the point that a lot of the shift and change is happening. Then when you start to get into the point of awareness and where things go from there, like that's getting to that point of like being open, being willingly committed to change, being willing to try things, truly try things, being willing to receive help. Like all of those things come after that point of awareness. And that is a game changer. Often in my life, I refer to those as inflection points because it feels like my life was going on one direction. And then at that point, it takes a completely different tack, completely different angle, and I end up in a different place.
I always take the spreadsheet term, pivot point.
Yes,
You know,
it's a pivot point,
it's a pivot point.
100%. But when you get that pivot point and then you start looking at solutions, like just to be open and aware, like it's not a silver bullet. It's not a one and done. And the biggest reason I want to share this is I think it's the fallacy that I fell for over and over again. I just kept thinking, if I do this one thing and I just do it really well once, I'm done. Right? I'm gonna give it my all, and this is gonna be one hell of a week. I'm gonna give it everything for a week, and I'm done. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Substantial progress. I've had some weeks in my life that were pivotal, incredible progress being made, and it wasn't the end of the journey. There were still other modalities to be experienced. There was integrating the experience, the integration part of it, which we'll talk about after we go through the modalities, is a huge part of how do you bring this into your life so that you're living your better life, not just, I had a dream of it, I was inspired, but now I'm back to the same old, right?
Yeah.
So just knowing that it's not a one and done, it will continue. And then creating your own map towards liberation. Like you are empowered in this. You are an active participant in this. It's not for somebody else to tell you what you should do. You can listen to others, get guidance from others, especially experts, people who've been through this before, people who have helped other people. All that guidance is incredibly useful. And you are the one who gets to take ownership of this map that you're creating and your own healing process.
And just the more skills you have in your, toolbox, the easier life becomes because you now have all these different ways of dealing with whatever comes your way. You know, you can now become resilient. You are now able to lift yourself up when you fall. You now know where to go if you can't figure it out or if you just need to get it out. So life will get easier. I promise you, life will get easier the more you do it.
And it stops being just about surviving. it stops being just about man making it for another day, another hour, another however long.
Yeah.
Like there's that it's that phrase out there that I've always loved. It's like, man, you got to start thriving, not just surviving, right?
Yeah.
And that's the shift. You can get out of that day to day, that week to week, that month to month survival. And man, at times for me, it felt like hour to hour survival. You can get out of that and actually begin to imagine and experience a truly brighter future. Cool. Well, my friends, thank you. Thank you for joining us here. Greatly, greatly appreciate you. In the next episode and in episodes from this point, we're going to start to break down different modalities. Here's the modalities that we've experienced. Here's where they've been incredibly helpful. Let you know like what the landscape is so that you can begin to create your own healing map. And look forward to seeing you on our next one. I won't be there. I'm actually taking a trip to Egypt, which I'll have some very interesting stories, I believe. So I'm going with a group of healers. So I'm going to have some really interesting stories to bring back when I return. Rod's going to be leading our next episode. Complete props to him. You're in incredible hands, probably even better hands than my own. And I look forward to it. So if you're watching this after it's been live, again, feel free to leave a comment down below if there's anything that we can answer. We'll bring it into the next episode. If you believe this could help somebody, feel free to share it, especially if in that space where information will be the most effective thing to be able to help them. And yeah, just remember that it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness.
Thank you. Good night.
Big love. Be well.
Bye.